call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is approval of the regular session minutes for March 15th, 2022.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Noyes-Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Emerald-Kane. Any discussion, edits? All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions for the record?
Abstain.
2. Goodwin and Mrs. Noble. Next, are these subject to release?
Guy kidding over the reason.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve and hold the executive session minutes of March 15th, 2022. Which has been made by Mrs. Noyes-Miller. Seconded by Ms. Cunningham. Discussion. Again, these will be held. They're not subject to release. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions for the record. Goodwin. All right, we'll move to the financial report. Steve?
Okay, this is for ending March 31st. As you can see from the historical data that we are in line with the previous 4 years. Revenues are a little bit lagging, but we should expect those to catch up as we near the end of the year. With the financials in general, we're watching some areas, electric, the other utilities, transportation areas as we end the year. Fuel prices have not been kind to us, so we need to watch that. And just a little FYI there, snow and ice round up about 16% over, about 5,000 over. We do have the funds in rural aid, as well as some other areas where we can go ahead and handle all these overages, but we look to be in very nice shape. And the next piece of the financial is ESSER 3.
Yeah, I'll run through that, sure.
Just any questions on the financial report? All right, ESSER 3.
So if you'll remember, this time last year, we put out to you a plan that, it was a 3-year plan to use the ESSER funds, who had a life of 3 years. We pretty much stuck to that plan. We updated you during the budget process, what we think the next 2 years should do, as we did get some things into the regular budget to start getting off that cliff. So this is just the summary document right now of what it looks like would be our now 2-year plan, unless again, when we build our next budget, there's a couple of these items we might again be trying to get into the regular budget that we think are priorities. So just to show you, ESSER 3, which is the final round, is $954,000. If we can spend that through September 24. So we've got all of fiscal 23, all of fiscal 24, and can finish it up over the summer. So we pretty much divided that in half and said, what is the smart thing to do with it? We have the balance. For year 1, we had $80,000 to pay for a team chair here at the junior high. We got $50,000 of that into the budget. So we just need the balance of that. If you remember, we were funding 2 teaching positions this year that we had to cut, and we've got 1 of them in the budget, so there's 1 more. So that's going to be a priority. We're going to try to get back in next year. We're going to continue to fund an additional instructional assistant on each side of the street to give some additional supports. The L teacher is new. So I'm going to segue and probably even kind of get ahead of myself from my superintendent's report. While I was very quick to how wonderful our program review audit was on the special ed programs and our special ed documentation, et cetera, we had the same type of review, the tiered focused monitoring review, on our English language program, and didn't fare quite as well. Not horrible. There's like 100 indicators, and you're either partially meeting or not at all. There was nothing that was not at all. There was about 5 that was partially meeting. But we are, as we've talked about for a number of months, I think, seeing this increase in English learners population. And while 6 years ago, we had one English learner teacher across all 7 buildings, that just, we cannot meet the needs of this population. So as we saw the findings and also saw the population that is continuing to come in, we do believe that we need to hire an English learner position for a full one for just Tantasqua. So it won't be shared with the elementaries. So that's what we put there. And again, we're probably over the next year or two gonna need to figure out how to get that into the budget, because I don't think that problem is going away in the next 2 years. I think it's going to keep increasing. So that's what's happening there. We are trying across the district just for some extra support in the mental health and behavioral areas. We're trying to get, we're calling behavior and social support assistants, they're RBTs, registered behavioral technicians. So it is a course program, it is a certification that folks get. We thought it would be great. There's at least 4 of our districts that need this extra. It's not quite a BCBA, so not a professional salary, but it's a higher level support than a standard instructional assistant or classroom support. While we're putting this here, we're also already finding they're hard to find. So we're gonna kind of earmark those dollars. If we can find one, it's extra support. If not, we'll have to be getting creative on what else we could do to give the support in the behavioral areas that we're finding. And then what's left, we're gonna earmark $50,000 for continued HVAC upgrades, because something always happens that we didn't plan. So we just kind of want to leave that there. And as we talked about during the public hearing, the things that we were able to put back into the budget allowed us a bigger pool of money left for technology. So that'll be a combination of more Chromebooks. The high school needs Chromebooks and access points. The junior high still has a number of smart boards that need to be replaced and access points. So we want to, between this year 1 and if we can do the same thing year 2, we should be in pretty good shape from a technology point of view and devices in 2 years. So if there are no issues, I don't need to vote on it, but wanted to make sure you all aware that that's our hope.
Yeah.
Just a question on the EL teacher. How many do we have district-wide? Just the one, or?
So district-wide, we currently have 2.
Okay.
Burgess alone has 1 and has needed the one for a couple of years. The other one is primarily Tantasqua and helping the other small elementary schools.
Okay.
So, and that's becoming a bigger task. So ultimately, Tantasqua will probably have maybe the equivalent of 1.5, depending on what's happening in the littler schools.
Mm-hmm.
The smaller elementary schools typically only have 1 or 2 English learning students. So I think Tantasqua will end up with probably 1.5 worth of support between the 2 buildings.
Other questions on recommendations? All right, we'll move to staff report. Mr. Sturgis?
Sure. So just a couple things. First off, we have officially finished round 1 of MCAS season of English ELA testing is done. The only reason I know not everybody cares about the MCAS testing process, but the one thing I'd like to point out is this: we have been able over time, just my 4 years, to purchase enough devices that actually, now that it's all electronic, kids actually got to take them in their classrooms on Chromebooks grade-wide. I mean, we don't have enough to do school-wide yet, but grade 300 kids at a time took 2 days of testing back-to-back in there, not having to uproot kids to this lab and the labs all around the building. So it was nice to be able to do that. And then we have plenty of ample space for our small group settings for kids when needed. So we're getting there with the technology, at least in this building. But then round 2 of MCAS is math. It's in mid-May, and we should be all set to go for that as well. And then 8th grade is right after that with science and technology. The school play went off at the end of March. And I wanted the kids at Awesome, there's 25 kids involved, about 3 backstage kids, 22 on-stage kids. It was 2 nights. My first year here, you couldn't have added the 2 nights of people in the audience together to make up how many people were in attendance in either of the 2 nights. Mrs. Belial, as she's tried to do in the past, actually donates 20% of the tickets, the money they collect, to different charities, one per night. So Thursday night, we were able to donate $276 to Second Chance Animal Shelter. That was 20% of the $1,300 they brought in on that one night. And then they were also able to give 20% of $1,924 brought in on the Friday night show to St. Luke's Guest House, which is a homeless shelter in Southbridge. And so that it was nice to be able to give them the $385 check just off of our play tickets. I know English teachers gave kids extra credit for attending, but they always do that, and kids never come, and it was packed. So I think with COVID kind of leaving us, people are going to anything and everything they can. And so just want to note too, just from a student perspective, we had our geography bee that we had been postponing because we did not want to just do it for the 3 kids in the finals. We wanted it in front of kids and let them have that platform. It's one of the cool things we do for the kids. And we did have a winner at grade 8, Alana Williams, who came through in the end. I do want to note a kid named Javen Mumford, a 7th grader, who got nothing wrong until the very last question. And so, I mean, answering questions with words in it that I've never heard of as a 7th grader. And so literally got the last question wrong, which was a FIFA question of where the World Cup was in province in Canada. So it wasn't even a geo question for you. But anyways, congratulations to Alana. We did have an online virtual Holocaust presentation by Ada Winston. I always want to call her Weinstein, but it's Winston. She was actually a Holocaust survivor herself, and she was obviously I think she was 5 years old, or 3 to 5 years old. And the kids, even on a virtual screen, I was on mine, you can see them all locked in. They were all paying attention. They were all respectful. They had all excellent questions at the end. There was no nonsense, and she was pretty direct, very informative, and no holding back information. So it was cool. I mean, if she lived through a terrible thing, but it's cool to hear her tell about it as an actual first-hand account. And then I want to note in our Winter Warrior Challenge, we've done it. We started it 3 years ago, the year of COVID. It was a February month challenge. I do want to point out Max Impact Nutrition did donate. They gave out coupons to every kid who participated in the challenge. But they did also donate a Fitbit to the winner of the challenge. So it was good to have that, because we were scrambling trying to come up with a prize for the kid who logged the most physical activity hours outdoors in February. And then at this point, we are actually, as crazy as crazy to me, we are actually planning end-of-year activities and cookouts and field days and building schedules for next year. So it's amazing that we've got to that point, what feels like so quickly, and took forever. So, if anyone has any questions?
You've got a request for us as well?
I do. I have a request to declare a few items obsolete. In our Pathways classroom, I don't know if anyone has ever been down there, there's 2 rooms attached, separated by a divider wall. We have a new teacher in there this year who has gone into the other side that was just years and years of things piling up, and has given me a few of these larger items that haven't been used in years, are either broken, or the specialists have said they cannot be used or repaired. The cost to repair some of these things would be far greater than just buying something more modern and new. So most of them are non-functional anymore. The bicycle is an exercise bike, not an actual bike. So I'm asking if we can declare those obsolete, to remove those from the building.
I'll entertain a motion to declare the items as listed on Mr. Sturgis's note obsolete.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mr. Goodwin, seconded by Mrs. Randall. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Sturgis?
Just feedback, the Holocaust survivor, I thought it was an in-person display by the way my son talked about it, so it obviously was very well received.
Yeah, that's awesome. She wanted to do it in person, but she's in her 90s and
Yeah.
she's not ready to go out to public. So.
I would have never guessed it was done virtually by the way he talked about it, so it was very well received at my house.
Awesome.
Any other questions for Mr. Sturgis? All right, it's my pleasure to recognize permanent principal, Ms. Lee Joseph.
Well, I think that was before. Thank you, thank you. Some things that we're proud of is some of the community things that we have on here. Our science department not only has sent conservation students in working with the greenhouse, planting vegetables and flowers, working together with our Pathways students to do that. They are also hand in hand with NHS, working with Sturbridge Community Gardens to assist them. They have their upcoming cleaning day ahead, and we have the plant, one plant community service event taking place that Erin Parker from NHS is running again, which had a huge amount of success last year. I don't remember the number of pounds overall. She was amazing and did actually weigh everything. She picked up on, she and her family picked up on Tuesdays and Saturdays throughout the summer, late spring, throughout the summer and early fall last year. And she got more than she bargained for. But she and her brother are committed to doing this again, as are other members of NHS, and are going to work with the Sturbridge Community Garden as well. As we're talking about in the future, doing a starter seed program where our teachers volunteer to hone a starter seed in their classroom, care for it, and it becomes a seedling to donate that to the Sturbridge Community Garden, which will then help our local food pantries and community needs. So that's something that we're really proud of. Also, a neat thing that the biology classes have been doing is having outreach to other students, our former alumni that are now either studying or working in areas of science, where they join virtually this year, and hopes are that someday we'll either be able to take a field trip to their work location or have them come in to visit. But for this year, this design worked, and it certainly does allow them to, move on with their work day as well, which we appreciate. But they're connecting with our kids virtually to talk about their experiences, their educational path and program, the challenges, the pleasant surprises, the not so pleasant surprises, and what their work world looks like, which has been really a great eye-opening experience for our students. So we're happy to see that. Our student council kids had a Dude Be Nice week where they worked with multiple school groups and organizations to find ways that each of the school groups could bring forth a way to have awareness about how we can be kind to each other, how we can recognize some things that we all, that each of us experiences, the hardships that we have as individuals, given where we come from and what we do. And it was a nice way to bring the week together. We saw random acts of kindness from people that you didn't expect to see random acts of kindness from. A young man followed up that he had made a commitment. We had an advisory as part of this, and it was a subsequent lesson. They've all connected to each other. He made a commitment in January that he would follow through on the next lesson to the next group, which is to go thank a cafeteria worker and deliver a thank you, and things like that. So he had nice messages that he gave to people that didn't expect them, which were really great. And again, not necessarily the student that you would think would take it upon himself to do that. So it was really nice to see that. And it was nice to see many of our school groups and organizations come together to work together for that. We also are looking ahead. We have Relay for Life coming up this weekend, and we have just over $12,000 raised so far, the preliminary, before even coming to the event. So that's exciting. The group that's doing it is a little different than we've normally had in the past. We've normally had a larger group than we have this year, but it's mostly our Best Buddies group that's been working together on this with our advisor, and they've been setting up every day this week and getting things ready. We're doing that inside the field house area, as it's a little warmer in April. Typically, we can't always prepare for the weather. And they do like to have food and camp out, which we can't, which we don't do on the stadium field area. So we have that this coming weekend. There is discussion about if we're going to continue with the American Cancer Society or do the Jimmy Fund next year, but this in the same vein, with the same kind of effort, because there are lots of hoops to jump through now with the American Cancer Society that are not always easy to navigate. We're also looking forward to next week where we have Mamma Mia. So we hope that people can make it next week, next Friday at 7, next Saturday at 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock. It's a little bit of a time difference than usual because we also have SATs next Saturday. It's also prom season. So the prom is scheduled for Friday, May 13th. And though we thought that we were going to have it seniors only, and at a different location. We are moving forward at the DCU Center with both juniors and seniors where they both can have guests, and we are moving forward with the junior-senior prom moving forward. They've done their homework. They were really disappointed, but they learned that we're not in that sweet spot where we can rent another facility that many other schools that are smaller have the ability to rent, because even with just one class and doing just a junior prom and just a senior prom, we're still just too big for those locations. So we're moving forward in the future with junior-senior proms. This year, again, we're at the DCU Center. We are booked next year at the Marriott in Worcester, and the following year at the Sheraton Tara in Framingham. We bus them back and forth, so we're not worried about hotel rooms. So and that is part of it. We will be busing our students back and forth. We also have a handicap accessible bus for wheelchair, so that everybody is able to get that experience as well for prom. We'll be working with the Sturbridge Police Department between the High Five experience and with also doing the seatbelt pledge and safety pledges in advance of that. We're also getting ready for our seniors to depart in just a few weeks, final exams and graduation, so those plans are underway. And just as Mr. Sturgis said, it's amazing and crazy that we're here at April. I can't believe that I've now been doing this for, 9 months almost. I'm surviving, getting up every day, and looking forward to next year and starting to plan that schedule. So that's where we are.
Questions for Ms. Joseph?
Is the busing mandatory?
Yes.
Good.
The busing is mandatory for all prom participants to go to and from.
Good.
I will say there are sometimes exceptions on the from part. So if a student is not feeling well, the parents have made previous arrangements because they have a family commitment. We do allow the parent to pick up at the prom location, but it must be the parent or guardian of the Tantasqua student to pick them up, and they must meet an administrator in person in order to depart. But everybody is to be bused there, which is why we felt it was so important to make sure that we had the handicap accessible bus as well for equality.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to committee reports, budget.
No meeting. Town meetings are coming up, so make sure you get out and support your town's budgets.
2 in May and 3 in June.
Yep.
Used to have a good earlier, but
Yeah.
A little later these days.
Yeah.
Brimfield is
Technical?
the latest.
Yep.
Curriculum.
Yes, we have a meeting Monday night. The agenda was a lot of surveys about different topics. And if you're interested in any of these, I'm sure if you let Deb or Mike or someone know, you can get copies yourself. The surveys were AP enrollment and participation, so. And then 2021 College Board scores. And then an interesting one, the senior exit survey. So if you want any of those 3, just let someone know. Also, Jody presented the MTSS plan, which she is going to fill us in a little bit on now.
Sure. So as you can imagine, with COVID, we have a high need stakes to improve learner gaps, right? Teachers are feeling the crunch and trying to provide students with supports. In the 2 years, they're probably, we haven't focused a lot on process. So we're trying to go back to process. In 2018, before COVID hit, the DESE published what is called the MTSS guidebook. It's a derivative of RTI, if you remember RTI back in 2006. That term has been around for a long time. RTI is like a component of addressing curriculum gaps or learner needs. MTSS is a little bit more global. It talks more to addressing social and emotional needs versus just RTI, although RTI is a component of MTSS. So then, after COVID, or during COVID, the DESE published what was called the Acceleration Roadmap, which was another way for teachers to look at, we need to provide just-in-time scaffolding, so kids who had gaps from the previous year of being in and out of school, as we know, that, we don't, as a 7th grade teacher, I don't need to teach all of 6th grade to get my child, my student, up to grade level. And that's what teachers felt like. They had to reel back a little bit and say, no, I need to teach all this foundational stuff before moving to the grade level work. So that's what the acceleration roadmap. And then we have, on top of those 2 documents, we have a DCAP, a very comprehensive DCAP plan, which is about 80 pages long in the district. It's a district accommodation plan for referral, like SST, which is a student success team. It's a team of teachers that comes around and talks about all of these facets to student learning. So it's overwhelming. It's extremely overwhelming. And teachers, one, don't have the time to kind of get involved in all of the documents, but we need to reel back a little bit and go back to basics, so teachers realize they're doing what they need to do to support kids without relying necessarily on a special ed referral or even SST referral, which can go to other staff members. So we're trying to put together this document that's a little bit more concise, a little bit more applicable to the grade levels. So what I did is, for each of the grade levels, I identified grade level accommodations that can be used by all teachers in that grade level to deal with specific needs. Could be test taking, anxiety, could be organization, as well as the academic pieces. So it's basically putting together tools for teachers to use to be able to apply on the spot and say, I've tried this, it didn't work. I tried this, it didn't work. So when they go to that SST meeting, either a small team or a large team, it depends on the school, then they have data and they can make informed decisions as a group instead of trying to take all that on themselves. So we have flow charts on how to read data, we have flow charts on how to read social emotional issues, and then we have flow charts to show who our target support people will be. So that's what, it's a draft. I worked really hard K to 6 prior to COVID. During COVID, I really focused in on 7th and 8th. My quest next year with Lee's cooperation and help is to move to high school so that we can have a K to 12 document for the entire district.
And even the document as drafted does have secondary
Yes, it does.
examples.
Yeah.
It's a great document that I was planning on sharing with you all, even in draft mode.
Yeah.
So I will get it, and I know curriculum has it, but I will get it to everyone. It is a nice, fairly condensed, in layman terms,
Right.
no acronyms.
Right.
It's a really, I'll send it out to you all, because
And I can't
it's
take all
definitely
credit.
very
I
useful
really
and easy
had
to understand document.
great help with the coaches
Yep.
throughout the entire district and the department
Yep.
heads. And a lot of consulting back and forth to make sure that we had the right resources down for teachers to be able to readily access. So.
I'm just gonna hand it around so you can get an idea of what it looks like, and then,
Yeah, I'll get it.
Yeah.
I was planning on
Yeah.
sending it out within the next week or two anyway, so I'll make
But
sure
the
you
last
get it.
thing on our schedule was strategic planning update. We've been limping along toward this a little bit because there are so many other issues that are taking up the time. So, do you have anything you want to say, Deb, tonight about strategic?
No, other than it will be one of my goals coming to you in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks for next
Yeah.
year. It's a priority. There's a couple of resources out there that I think I might want to tap into to help us facilitate the process. But there's also, as I've been talking with a lot of my peers in other districts, the terms are always out there, but the products are a bit different. What we have as a district improvement plan, our 5-year plan, in many other districts is considered the strategic plan. What we clearly need the most is we need a fresh mission vision. I desperately want a new mission statement and a document that said, what are we about? So I've got a couple of resources I'm gonna tap into, and you will see that as one of my number one priorities next year in my goal is to get that done.
That's it.
Thank you.
Could I just ask a question on that document? So after COVID, we'll be able to use that as just for any gaps as a kid, like it's kind of like.
We could use it right now.
Yeah,
right,
we could
right.
certainly use it today,
Yeah.
and to your question, we had a lot of, data, PD this year on STAR data. And one of the facets of the Renaissance STAR data is goal writing for kids, who are struggling. So teachers need to understand it's not for every child, it's for, and it's not all the time. We want to gradually release these kinds of accommodations to make sure that they can be independent and learn very much on their own. So all this is starting a process to say, these are good teaching practices anytime, anyway, anyway. And we're giving you a tool to reference so that you don't have to go through 3 different guidebooks that we have in the.
Right, because some of this other stuff, and it sounds overwhelming. When you look at that document, it's far less overwhelming.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
So it's like a how-to for any kid.
It's
that-
here's some examples
This
of.
kid has a
of-
gap, this is how to get him.
yeah.
Right.
There's a
Right.
notes
Some
page,
ways.
Yep.
there's a notes page to just write
Yeah.
notes so that you can put it in record for that child. You can have it as a check mark, and again, it's not all inclusive, these are just ideas, so it's a starting point, and it gets some good discussion going.
Yep.
Oh, very cool. Thank you.
How does that work in concert with 504 plans?
So this is all pre-504 and referral process.
Okay,
This
so
is-
it doesn't apply to the kids who are already on?
No, this is
Okay.
all general ed practice for teachers in core curriculum, or just tier 1 is what it's called. We have 3 tiers. Tier 1 is all students, tier 2, then you start drilling down based on student needs. And that's what the picture on the top, the house, and they all kind of glide back and forth. Students don't always have to be in a tier 2 service.
Right.
If they have reached that goal, then they can move out, and then it's fluid back and forth.
Thanks.
This might be a funny question, but how do the teachers have time to do this for their students?
So that's the point. So
That's a lot.
it's data driven, and so you think about MCAS for the most, but that's the tool we know. 75% of our students are going to meet the benchmark. It's the other 25% that we focus in on, and then even those needs are so very different. It's not always academic, it's sometimes social emotional. So as long as we're addressing the particular need, and we focus on one thing before going to another. So we don't have to look at it as, oh, this kid has so many gaps. Well, what's one thing that we can do right now and put together some accommodations to improve it? And if it improves, then there's no need for extended referrals like SST or 504 IEP, because we know good teaching practices will just enhance whatever the issue is, so. And some good teaching practices will not, so that's how we know, to keep drill down even further. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thanks, Jody. All right, that brings us to Bylaw and Policy. Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Yes, unfinished business. There are 6 policies before you under unfinished business. I move that those 6 policies, beginning with policy JFABB and ending with policy JIFCB, either be amended or rescinded on second reading as noted on the agenda. There have been no change to any of them since first reading.
Bring that recommendation to the floor. It doesn't require a second. It's a discussion. Objections? Unanimous consent, the motion carries.
Under new business, I'm going to have to take these, at least the first 7 individually. Policy JI, student rights and responsibilities. This is really simply a statement of students' rights under the state and federal constitutions and statutes. We made a few changes looking at them as when the packet came out. I would like to actually make an amendment from the floor because I think we missed something. You'll notice we took out the first paragraph with the new first paragraph, which starts students' rights. I think students should be plural instead of singular, so it should be students S apostrophe. And I further recommend that it goes, students' rights and responsibilities under the federal and state constitution and statutes include the following. You lost the reference to the law that we're actually referencing down below.
So you're making that
I'm
amendment?
making that motion from the floor, yes, that the policy be amended as is on paper before you, but with the additional amendment.
That requires a second.
Yep.
We have one. Second. All right, motion's been made by Mrs. Fitzgerald, seconded by Mrs. Rose Miller. Discussion? Any objections? By unanimous consent, so approved.
Policy JICE, student publications. This one also, I just can't let it go. In the first sentence, students have the right to freely express their views. I am recommending that it state otherwise. Students have the right to express their views freely in speech, writing, or through blah, blah, blah. It's just more proper English. And you'll note that we did take out, what we're trying to do with our policies, as we've stated repeatedly, is to really keep them general policies under which we can then promulgate procedure. And what you see deleted here is nothing that was recommended or required by either MSSC or the law, so we've taken that out. And we did include, as you'll see, the boldface, a requirement as law states to, that no expression by students. Each student publication should include the following, which is a cite to state law about student expression. So that's the reason behind the deletion and the addition. Again, to adhere more closely to law.
There's a motion on the floor by Mrs. Fitzgerald. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Leah. Discussion? Questions? Objections? By unanimous consent, so approved.
Policy JICHA, use of evidential breath test. You can see from looking at it, this started off as an alcohol prohibition against alcohol policy, and it very quickly became a procedure on how to use a breathalyzer. That is neither recommended nor required by either MASC or law. Our recommendation is that that entire procedure as to the use of breathalyzer be moved elsewhere. It is the handbook, or actually in a separate document, that the policy be restricted to the prohibition against alcohol. I'll note that neither state law nor MASC, MASC doesn't even recommend a separate alcohol policy. We do reference alcohol along with other substances in another policy, but we felt it was important to keep a general policy prohibiting alcohol use at school events. And you'll see that the policy does refer readers to the student handbook for the testing guidelines and procedures. And that's because with time and advancement of technology, those procedures and guidelines can constantly change. And we don't want to be in the position of having to change our policy every time technology or the use of breathalyzers or whatever other machinery or technique might be advanced changes.
All right, that's a recommendation of the subcommittee. We'll bring it to the floor. Questions, discussion? Any objections? Unanimous consent, approved on first reading.
Next policy, JIE, regarding pregnant students. You'll see the change. The one before you, I think, shows the old policy, and then right below it actually is our recommended policy. I didn't want there to be any confusion there. We no longer require that, the law does not require that a pregnant student obtain the certification of a physician to return to school or to be in school during pregnancy. So we have altered the policy, revised the policy to accurately reflect that. You'll see that the second paragraph now states that the school district does not require a pregnant student to obtain the certification of a physician to continue in school. That's the only change to the policy.
Bring the motion forward to the floor. It's a recommendation. Discussion? Are there any objections? Seeing none. Approved under first reading by unanimous consent.
All right. Next policy, JJA. I will admit that this policy, along with field trips and late night trips, has been a nightmare trying to reconcile these different policies and make them stand alone without needless overlap. I think we've done that at this point. What's before you is the overnight student travel policy. You will see that we took out references that included late night student travel. This is strictly limited to overnight travel. You'll see that trips that include overnight student travel should use commercial motor carriers, but those carriers will include a pre-trip check of the company's drivers and vehicles, and they will include a quarter. So again, it's simply trying to distinguish between field trips, late night travel, which doesn't necessarily come before the school committee, and overnight travel trips, which do. That's why you see the change you do.
Further recommendation to the floor, is there any discussion? Yes.
Does this apply to, like show choir and school, student council and all those kinds of?
Well, and that was the problem. The original policy did included late night, overnight travel or late night travel, which meant under this policy that show choir who was coming back from a late trip, one would have to use commercial vehicles instead of being able to, with the discretion and the authority of the administration, use other vehicles, and they were going to have to come before school committee for all of those regular activities that they do. So this no longer would apply to that. We've taken that out of here. It would include their trips that include overnight travel.
Okay.
Anything,
they do those.
anything that stays overnight,
Yeah.
it does
Student
include that.
council
And
does.
then,
It simply doesn't
And
include when
those
they
go
go
to
to
the school
Boston and they
committee.
don't get back till 11 o'clock
Yeah.
at night. That's a
It
different trip.
I can't speak for the past. but it will
okay.
be.
I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's an interesting point, though. So, yes, there are overnight trips that will come. The ones that are, on occasion from the music department or show choir come to you and you vote. MASC doesn't necessarily come to you every year. It's this ongoing trip, and I kind of put it in the same in elementary schools where you have this book of fundraisers and a policy that says you need to come and get vote for a different fundraiser. If you've done it before, it's okay. So I feel like that's kind of what we've been, because we definitely aren't coming to you every time there's an MASC annual conference.
Yeah,
But
you're right.
anything that is a unique, not an annual situation comes to you for a vote if it's an overnight.
But if you're exempting the chaperone from any cost, it's generally related to fundraising support. That does require a vote of school committee.
And that is included in this policy, the
Yeah.
fundraising
So
support.
MASC, you probably don't,
We haven't had MASC for the last 3 years, 3 years overnight in person. It was in person this year on a one-day event, 9 to 9. But in the past, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I believe the second week in March, students leave on a Wednesday morning. They return on Friday just before the close of the day. They're overnight at one of the hotels that MASC offers. There are usually 2 hotels. There is typically one counselor and chaperone that goes with them. At times we have had 2 when the SRO has been available in order to travel with them as needed. Also, that's been a good community opportunity in the past at times. And so I don't know that they've gone before you before. The students.
Is there fundraising that's done to cover the cost of the chaperone? Because that's what would require
The fundraising is done in the sense that the students have activities like homecoming, and those funds from homecoming offset the cost for students. And in the more recent past, they've done more than offset. They've paid the entire cost, and it pays for the chaperone as well.
So those chaperones would need to be exempt.
Right.
We would have to vote on that. Yeah.
Right.
Because the vote we take is to authorize the overnight travel and exempt the chaperone from the conflict of interest law, which if we don't take, technically could be filed against the chaperone. So that's, I think, the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other discussion on JJA? Any objections? By unanimous consent, amended on first reading.
Right, JJB, student organizations. Really two small revisions here. In the last paragraph, you see the was changed to a faculty advisor. but the real revision was under the cross-reference. It's not shown here, but the initial reference was to a gang activity and secret societies policy, which we do not have. So we are referring to our hazing policy, which is more appropriate here. So it's just two very technical revisions only.
Bring that to the floor, discussion. Any objections? Unanimous consent, approved
And
on
then,
first reading.
and then finally, policy JICG, tobacco use. Similarly with the alcohol use, there is no MASC recommended policy on tobacco use. Tobacco is rolled in with other prohibited substances elsewhere. So we're requesting that the policy be rescinded as an unnecessary restatement of the law and duplicative of our other policies.
Bring that to the floor as a recommendation, discussion, objections. By unanimous consent, send it on first reading.
And that's it. We had one other policy on academic freedom that we reviewed but did not change, and we hopefully have one more last meeting this year on May 9th.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Brings us to negotiations committee report. Mrs. Randall?
Negotiations are ongoing with 2 units at this time, so we're moving along.
Soon to be good.
Yes.
And then finally, building a physical plant, Mrs. Leo?
We did not have a meeting. No meeting going.
And then there was a communication distributed by the superintendent. Okay,
Right.
you're
I
gonna
figured
have
she was gonna report on it.
Yep.
All right, we will move to communications, couple of items in there, letters as directed by the committee, and then also the electronic report. And that brings us to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so with the segue, the first thing I did at least communicate with the Building and Physical Plant Subcommittee is that unfortunately, well, now it just seems like forever ago, but it was probably 3 to 4 weeks ago, we had an unexpected flooding situation in the field house. When we had a softball, it wasn't, first I was like, why are we using, wasn't even a legit softball, it was the old softy balls that you're supposed to use when you're indoors, but it hit a sprinkler head and set it off. So that one sprinkler head definitely deposited a significant amount of water for 30 minutes or so, because we can't turn the system off until the fire department gets here and turns it off. So Lee had video, the custodial staff was literally wet backing as the river was coming down.
They were amazing.
They really were. They were right on top of it. It was towards the edge of the basketball court, so it was coming partly basketball court and partly track in one area. They did a fantastic job of cleaning up. It happened on a Friday at 3:15. The repair happened on Saturday, so the system was back operating. They did everything they could to clean. Sally Sunshine held on as long as she could, thinking we vacuumed it up. We had the monster fans there for the weekend, and we're very optimistic, but unfortunately after a week you could see some buckling and some wearing, so ultimately the basketball court will need to be replaced. So another insurance claim has been put, clearly not one, I mean, we've had far worse, so I'm still trying to be optimistic, but ultimately the insurance company agreed that it needs to be replaced. They are on top of it. They've already lined up a vendor that will be here over the summer to replace it. So it will interrupt a little bit our summer sports operations, but all in all, it could have been a lot worse and a lot more disruptive. So that's the facility update. Guess it'll be another couple of years before we see those insurance rates go down. In that area of the facility on top of Fieldhouse is just an update to let you folks know very beginning of April vacation, so maybe 2 weeks ago almost, we did receive a resignation from our athletic director. She is moving on to Franklin, yes?
Franklin House.
Yep. So we did post this week. We're planning, at least initially, we posted for the same setup we've had for the last 2 athletic directors, which is full-time, 210 days, and we'll see what we get for applicants. Lee and I will work on having an interview committee, and hopefully we'll be okay. By July 1, we'll have a new athletic director, and we'll keep you posted on that. Pool testing. Pool testing is exhausting your nurses, and we are ready to halt, although I did say we tested again this week and got no positives. I would like to do 1 more week to at least honor the traditional 10 days after a school break. But from a data point of view, since September, across our district, we've had 4,700 rapid tests given by our nurses. 0.8%, which is 39 of them, caught a positive from a pool test. For Tantasqua's facilities alone, since February vacation, there has been 1 at the high school and 2 at the junior high. The last one was the first week of March. So our nurses are going through the effort, and it's stopping them from doing other critical things that I support. We stop doing. We still continue, and there is no end in sight of the free at home. So every 2 weeks we are sending home to anyone who wants the box so they can test themselves once a week. The department that originally had committed to do that until middle of April, and then we got an email that said, literally it just said, it will be extended beyond the middle of April. That's it. I don't know how far, but, so my gut is they'll probably push us through the rest of the school year. Yeah. They come every 2 weeks, we distribute them, so we feel like that is a good protective measure for those who want it, and we continue to have the supplies for anyone who is symptomatic all of a sudden during the day can go to the nurse and get tested. So we'll continue that, but we will stop the pool testing after 1 more week. And that was it, other than the reminder in case Mr. Valenzola forgets to say our May meeting is Monday the 23rd. And we're gonna start with the joint meeting. Yeah.
So what was?
You were gonna talk about your TED.
Not this Ted.
He refers to me as his Ted.
But did you? Sorry.
Boy, will that start some rumors.
Did you have
I just a quick question on what was the reason for the next week again?
Oh, so Holland, a couple of years ago, Holland changed their annual town meeting to being the same night as Tantasqua's traditional 3rd Tuesday. Now, it was changed without any communication with school, even though at the time there was a school committee member on the Board of Selectmen, but I am told that this year it is on their warrant to change it back to when it used to be. But it's a little tough. I really should be at the town meeting. We've got 2 Holland school committee members that have to choose whether to be representing Holland here or be at the town meeting. So we did last year, and we asked 1 more time, and everyone agreed to just move it to that Monday the 23rd. We'll make that the joint meeting night, and then we should be all set next year, because Holland will go back to, I think it's the day after Memorial Day is when it used to be. Yep. Yep.
So the 6 o'clock start?
6 o'clock start, and we'll run it right into Tantasqua after that.
Okay.
That's it from me, unless anyone has any
questions for Mrs. Boyd? All right, no one here for public access. We'll move to open forum. What's the date? May 15th.
That is the.
So the Tantasqua Education Foundation is hosting their annual brunch. It's back, which is awesome, at the Public House on May 15th. I have reserved a table for anybody here that would be interested. First come, first serve. Like to open that invitation up to school committee members, administrators. If you haven't been to one of their events before, they do a really nice job of showcasing where they've made their investments. The teachers that receive the grants come in and ultimately give a presentation on how they've utilized the funds. It's an awesome organization that we've, partnered really closely with and has supported our district for a number of years. I've always liked to support whatever events they host. And I talked to the president this year and I said, I'd like to reserve a table. And so I'm opening the invitation up to anybody here that would like to join. See me after the meeting, text me, email me. Again, first come, first serve, just so I can get the names so that I can get you on the list. If you'd like to join us, Mrs. Boyd will be there.
What's the date again?
May 15th.
Sunday the 15th, it's usually 11 to 1.
Yep, 11 o'clock.
At the public house in the tent.
In the tent outside. Okay, so the invitation is open.
Um,
Anybody else for open forum?
website?
I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Mrs. Noyes Miller, seconded by Mr. Goodwin. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 6:56. Thank you, everybody.
Hold on.